All right. Good afternoon. I believe it's afternoon for most folks. I'm Natalie Solden. with the Communications Office at the Office of Science. Welcome to the Office of Science's informational webinar. You can see on your screen, Fusion Energy Sciences, reaching new energy science workforce funding opportunity announcement. Before we get started, I have a couple of logistics to go over. This meeting is being recorded. You should have seen the pop-up saying you're being recorded. The recording of this meeting will be posted and available next week to the website, and I will drop that link in chat in a little bit. There are closed captions available. Please click on the closed captions button or the live transcript button to enable them. After the presentation, there will be a question and answer session. Please go ahead and use that Q&A box in Zoom to ask your question. With that, I'd like to introduce Guinevere Shaw from the Office of Fusion Energy Sciences.
Thank you, Natalie. So I greatly appreciate that introduction, but good afternoon, hopefully good afternoon, everybody. This is the informational webinar, again, for Fusion Energy Sciences for Renew, and I'll just go ahead and get into it. Okay, so this is the agenda, but when you see the slides online, what will make them easier is that it's actually hyperlinked throughout the presentation, so you don't have to scroll through everything, so that's good for everyone. Okay. So this is the Office of Science Introduction to Reaching a New Energy Science Workforce, or Renew. We wanted to kind of showcase what occurred in the first year, which is FY22. We were able to make $32 million awards across 6 programs. And so for 7 FY23 FOAs totaling the 56 million. So that's really exciting for the Office of Science, including Fusion Energy Sciences Office. And the whole purpose of this is to build foundations through undergraduate and graduate training opportunities. And as you can see here, we're hoping to increase, diversity, equity, inclusion in the Office of Science research portfolios. And this is one of the ways that we're doing it. And so if you're interested in finding out more about the general purpose of Renew outside of just for Fusion Energy Sciences, I recommend you check out the link below. This is a really large slide, and it's all of the program offices for FY23 in particular, but I wanted to focus on, for this webinar, the Fusion Energy Sciences. So what is the Fusion Energy Science mission? It's to expand the fundamental understanding of matter at very high temperatures, densities, to build the scientific foundation needed to develop a fusion energy source. And so if you're interested in understanding just a little bit more, I know that fusion's been in the news lately, specifically associated with inertial confinement, but we also have a broader fusion program research portfolio that spans general plasma science to fusion technology. So if, like I said, if you're interested, you can check us out at the Office of Science website, as well as for the general public education sites, the usfusionenergy.org. So just diving right into the FOA, I wanted to cover the solicitation context for the FY23 FOA. Similarly to last year's, the SES Renew FOA seeks new applications aimed to establish sustained research, and specifically for student training opportunities involving non-R1 and MSIs underrepresented within our research portfolio. And we really hope to engage students, postdoctoral researchers, and faculty from those institutions. In addition to this was already laid out actually in 3 particular community reports that I list below, which is the Long Range Plan, our National Academies Report, and the most recent White House Summit on Developing a Bold Decadal Vision. And there you could see the workforce development initiatives that were highlighted in these community activities. And so what the awards that I seek as part of the Fusion portfolio is to support these research opportunities that are open to the entire research portfolio. And specifically within this FOA, you'll see this under the fusion and plasma science research areas. So within the scope, again, I highlighted this before, but I wanted to be explicit of like what the SES Renew effort seeks to support and how that is also supported by FES Renew FOA. In addition, we are really focusing on involving the non-R1 and MSIs that are underrepresented. And so by this, we explicitly lay out that the non-R1 and MSI must be the lead applicant or the lead institution on the proposal. And so if you're wondering about eligibility, I recommend you check out the eligibility link. It does vary per FOA. So please, I recommend read the eligibility associated with, if you're interested in FES's FOA, read our FOA, and then you can go ahead and check out the link associated with non-R1 and MSI eligibility link there. So what I would like to highlight, and this is feedback that I received from the FY22 FOA cycle, was what is a multi-institutional team? So to be clear, SC uses two different mechanisms to support teams of multi-institutional teams. And regardless of the mechanism used, it's just to ensure collaborations that are participating in Renew. And so this is where I want to be very clear associated with this, is that if you were to do a multi-institutional team collaboration, the MSI or non-R1 must be the lead of that collaboration. And similarly for quote unquote a sub-award, which I'll get into a little bit later, again, the non-R1 institution or MSI must be the lead institution. Okay, for FES's Renew award information, in total, it's $6 million that we're dedicating to this solicitation. And we estimate the award size and duration to be anywhere between $200K to $500K per year for a total of 3-year award. And so we are expecting, and this is just based on the amount that we received last year, roughly between 2 to 10 awards we're hoping to make. For eligibility, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse here. But the lead institution is the non-R1 and MSI, and the partner is all institutions, including DOE and national labs. And for pre-application, it is limited to 1 per PI and no institutional limit. And then for deadlines for pre-application, this was actually highlighted on the first slide, but I wanted to reiterate the pre-application deadline is February 20th at 5 p.m. Eastern time. Pre-application response, that's my response to you, is a week later, February 27th at 5 p.m. Eastern time. And then the full application deadline is April 10th at 11:59 p.m. So to focus on the pre-application, again, it is required. And you must submit by an authorized institutional representative. If you're wondering what that is, I recommend you go to the FOA and you could read more information associated with this. It is in this section listed above. If you are considered a multi-institutional team submitting as a collaborative application, only the lead institution should submit the pre-application. If you're submitting as a sub-award, it's automatic that only one institution will be submitting this pre-application. You also must include a letter of collaboration from partnering investigator or investigators. This again is not a letter of recommendation, and no letter of recommendations are allowed. Collaboration is detailing that this is the partner I would like to work with, and that's quote unquote what a collaborator is. And most importantly, you must include a list of individuals who should not serve as merit reviewers. I recommend you go and you figure out which way to submit this best fits for you. For example, I've had in the past a Excel sheets where you can email me, or you can attach it as a PDF. I recommend, simpler is always better. If you create that Excel file as part of PAMS and submit it that way, that's good to be, I would say, less demanding on that side. So for full applications, now this isn't the entire list of information, so I recommend looking at the FOA, but I wanted to just be very explicit about a couple new things associated with the full application. Of course, abstract, DOE title page, project narrative. What is different within the project narrative is that I was more prescriptive on what I was looking for as part of the project narrative. I summarized it in a sentence here, but it's more detailed in the FOA, where I'd like to have a clear project narrative on specific objectives / aims of student programs and the proposed research that the students will be performing. Again, Renew focuses on students' development and providing student program and traineeships, whether it be working with an institution or national laboratory. The focus is meant to be on the students. And then in the appendix, everything is relatively the same, except for the promoting inclusive, equitable research, which is the peer plan. This is new. This is something that the Office of Science has done a really good job at advertising. So if you're wanting more information associated with this, actually I have a link later in the slides about what the peer plan is. And what is required. There's also an additional review criterion associated with the peer plan. This is something, if you were looking at FY22, the difference was the criterion was titled differently and requested different information. Now it's called a peer plan. And what I would like to highlight and emphasize is that even though you've answered some of these questions in your project narrative, you must prepare an appendix that answers the peer plan request. Okay, so I recommend review the peer requirements and include it in the appendix. I would not recommend stating that you covered this in the project narrative. Okay. So again, I wanted to highlight the multi-institutional teams to really describe the differences between what a collaborative proposal is versus a sub-award. So for pre-applications, they're relatively the same. For full applications, this is where the collaborative proposal can be a little bit more detailed logistically, but it ends up being pretty simple if you think about it. So for the full application, if you're deciding to be a collaborative application, you must indicate that you are a part of a collaborative application. Each partner must submit an application through their own sponsored research office. And each partner must submit their own SF424, unique budget, and unique budget justification. So those are the unique things that are different between the collaborative application. What is the same across all the collaborators is the title page, the narrative, and the required appendices. That is what is identical. And so, for example, if the lead institution would be submitting their collaborative application, the lead would be driving the project narrative, the title page, and the required appendices, while the partners will be determining their budgets associated with that research. And then the sub-award is where the lead institution will be sub-awarding all the partners associated through their institution. And so they would be leading and they would submit a single application with them, with partners associated with as a sub-award. So that's the difference. So here's some, I would say, common mistakes that have been found, and I recommend, looking at this, double checking, and I've narrowed it down to roughly 3 that I've seen just in my experience working with Renew, is the table of collaborators, conflicts of interest, people who should not be reviewers. please include this. It's very important. It really helps me, but it also just lets me know who I shouldn't be using to review your application. And then again, the promoting inclusive equitable research plans. I have the link here if you want additional information. There's also additional information in the FOA and an understanding what the additional review criterion is. So please check this out. And then finally, the data management plan. There has been new guidance associated with data management plan, and they've done a really good job of kind of mapping requirements to what is recommended to be included in a data management plan. I would recommend doing your due diligence and checking this out as well. So where to find additional information? I've linked the FOA PDF here. The webinar, again, will be recorded, the slides and the recording will be posted on the Renew page linked here. And then questions about the FOA, there is a frequent asked questions. So if you're interested in checking that out before sending me an email or asking any additional questions, I highly recommend that. And then finally, the questions and answers. So thank you, everyone. I know that went kind of quickly, but I'm excited to answer any questions. Okay.
Thank you. We have a couple of questions in chat or in question and answer. Is an MSI non-R1 required to have a collaborating partner? And can that partner be a private company?
They are required to have a collaborating partner, and all institutions are allowed to apply. And I think if it's a private company, there are like some specific, I would say there's some additional information they would have to provide associated with that. I can answer that offline. I will also have Mike as well kind of chime in later with answering that. But I think,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we have the name, so we can get back to those people. And then another question, it seems like the subaward model is easier from several perspectives. Under what conditions is the multi-institutional model recommended?
So to be clear, multi-institutional covers both the collaborative and the subaward. If you look at it within the FOA, the subaward, yes, it is logistically easier, where all the funding goes directly to the institution, and then the institution will manage the research associated with all the partners. The reason why we offer the collaborative application is for institutions or PIs that are new either to the FES research portfolio or new to the Office of Science and need a coordinating partner to assist in educating on the application process, on the process of managing a 3-year award. And so the collaborating aspect really assists in the sense where the PI is still very interested in participating in the research, but having a partner that is assisting in either the formation of the proposal, all of that aspect, that is what, that's why I have that option available. Yeah.
Thank you. A follow-up to the previous question, is there a list of presently active interested MSI and non-R1 institutions in the FES field?
I would say not publicly available. I have a list that I've been roughly making on my own. It's not publicly available. I don't feel comfortable sharing.
Sure.
Yeah. I think if I could reach out to those PIs to ask if it's okay to share it, then I don't mind sharing it. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm guessing the FOA or the call says pre-applications must be made by an authorized institutional rep. Who is this? Is it limited to particular bodies?
No. So in PAM, so if you're a university and you have a sponsored research office, there's a particular person within the sponsored research office that is an authorized personnel. For laboratories, this can be just, it's like a budget or financial, and they can register themselves within PAMs. And so if you actually go into the FOA and you see like, what is this authorized institutional rep? There's actually like a paragraph that says like the process of registering yourself as a authorized institutional rep within PAMs. And so I know that within the national laboratories, there's it's usually within the budget office that does this. For other institutions, I'm not most familiar, so I would recommend you go and read the FOA. Yeah.
Great. Let's see. Is Renew intended as an annual FOA? If so, is the timing used this year reflective of future intent in terms of FOA release dates?
Try to see if all future funding is contingent on congressional appropriations. Caveat. Okay. It is intended, the Office of Science does intend to have an annual FOA. The feedback we've received from doing our, there was like a bunch of webinars that we were doing, I think in FY21, to really understand, you know, how can we engage with non-R1 at MSI. We found that having as much time as possible is ideal. I think with this timeline, I think it's pretty good. If this is that, we would like it to be a little bit earlier being maybe in closer to the beginning of the fiscal year, but that's not a guarantee. But that's just like ideally with the feedback we've received, the longer the timeline to allow for institutions to develop collaborations and to develop those relationships, the better it is for the application process. And so ideally the Office of Science would like it to be closer to the beginning of the fiscal year. I don't know if that's going to occur. So
great. Another question, where a proposal involves a national user facility, is a brief letter of intent to collaborate helpful?
Yeah, that's fine.
Great.
Yes. Yeah.
And when will the final award be announced?
I'm hoping to announce it, and this is contingent on like a lot of things, but I'm hoping to announce them sometime in the early summer.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's our last question sitting in chat right now. I can give it another minute to see if anybody has any other questions.
There we go. We have another one.
Okay, great. Here we go. Can proposing institutions respond to both this FOA and the currently open FAIR FOA? Can those two proposals be correlated? FAIR for infrastructure, Renew for workforce. Do you know the answer to that?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
I will take that offline.
Okay.
That's a great question.
Okay, we'll follow up. Can you advise on a balance between student training and original research?
Okay, that's a great question. So I really would like to leave it up to the collaboration to be as creative as possible. However, I would say what I wouldn't like to see is where it really focuses on the research, say 80% of the time, and then it seems like the student development and involvement in the research is really tacked on. Ideally, the model you're kind of looking for is the student development and the research are kind of synonymous, where you're leading the research through the students. So you can, and that's ideally the case. However, I completely understand that there will take time in particular graduate programs or undergraduate programs where you're having to inform the students, say for the first year and a half, where you're developing like a webinar or course curricula to develop the student. And then in the latter half of the project, that's when they start the research. So then the PI will be kind of leading not only the development of the students, but then research later. And so that's where it isn't too much on the research and it's more focused on the development of the students versus say a seasoned PI that may already have like graduate students in a pipeline having research and then having the students lead the research, then they can do it the whole 3 years. So those are two idealized models, but I want to leave it up to the group to kind of be creative about this.
Can postdoctoral positions be included in the budget?
Absolutely. Yeah, they can.
Again, we've reached the end, but I will give it another minute just in case there's any follow-up.
This went quite quickly.
Does this also fund faculty?
Yes, it does.
Great.
And time as well. Not only for them to do the research and also teaching, but for example, if they need to take, for some institutions, they are provided 0 time allocation towards research. And so this would allow them to pay for time away from quote unquote teaching courses to focus on research. Yeah.
Great. For a multi-institution collaboration with an R1, would the R1 partner get some funding?
Yeah. Yes. So R1s can be a partner. They can be a partner through the collaborative application or through self-award. Yes.
Great.
I appreciate all your questions, Richard. Yeah.
Yep. Can an R1 partner be a national lab? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Will there be any unique progress reporting requirements?
Yeah, so similar to the FY22 FOA, in FY22, there was like very explicit ORISE reporting requirements. I think that is similarly done in the FY23 as well. It isn't quote unquote reporting like the Office of Science annual reporting requirements. It's more like a information request. And this is something that was very explicit in the FOA as well.
Another R1. Can an R1 partner be a private company?
I don't think an R1. Okay, so an R1 is a research institute. Carnegie Mellon has developed like a designation to what an R1 institution is versus a non-R1 institution. R1 being, for example, high or very high research for graduate education. versus a non-R1, which is, does not have graduate research education, is just an undergraduate institution. Okay, or it is designated as like moderate. And this is where I think it's good to go and look at those links to really understand like what an R1 designation is, and you can read that. The reason why I answered your first question about a national laboratory is there are some quote unquote SC facilities that are at universities and not at just national laboratories. And so if a SC facility is at a university and that university happens to be an R1 institution, then quote unquote, yes. But if a private company has a very different designation than an R1 institution. So a private company will fall under a different categorization. And I think that goes into the question previously I need to follow up on with Mike Zarkin on what there are stipulations on private company. I think private companies are allowed to apply as long as the research is focused on basic science and not applied research. Yeah.
Okay. And then can the award be transferred to a different MSI?
Yeah, so there's like a very specific detailed paragraph associated with changing an institution. If the lead institution, which is a non-R1 or an MSI, has to change, there has to be like extenuating circumstances, or it needs to be explained very well why the change is occurring. But if it's, say, for example, the award is, say the PI is moving to a different institution, but still would like to participate, they would actually have to transfer the award within the original institution, because awards are made to institutions, not PIs, and that's something that should be very clear. And so they would then have to submit like almost a supplemental to the existing award, the PI that changed to a different institution, if they still would like to participate. And that's like a whole nother conversation we could have. That's a really good question, but it depends on if you're a lead. If you're a lead, it's a lot more hoops to jump through. But if you are a partnering institution, I think it can be managed through supplemental award. Yeah.
I think with that, that's our last question. Once again, this is being recorded and will be uploaded to the website that I put in chat. And then if there are additional questions, Gwen has put up her email address and you can reach out to her there. Anything else you'd like to say, Gwen?
No, other than, make sure that you read the FOA. That is like the #1 thing I recommend anyone do. And then secondly, check out the freaking ask questions. And if you have any additional questions, reach out to me.
Great. Well, thank you everybody for joining.
All right. Thank you.